Hi, I'm Craig, and I help veterans go from feeling stuck and unseen after service to living with confidence, connection, and purpose so that they can thrive in civilian life and relationships. All right, so we've just gotten our decision letter back, and the first thing that we want to think about when we get our decision letter back is what does it actually mean? So the first thing is understanding your decision letter. If we take this thing step by step and we take it chunk by chunk, it won't be as unmanageable as it seems. So the first step in understanding your decision letter is realizing that you're going to get that decision letter by mail, and it could be and it'll be viewable online at va.gov. Basically, the way the VA has changed their system is you're going to get the decision letter, but now they have a new feature, which I think is really good. This feature's been around for, I think it's been a little while now, at least a year now, where you can actually go on the va.gov website and you can download a copy of all of your decision letters. It's a really nice feature that the VA has added, and it saves a lot of time for veterans to get their decision letters. Now, here's the thing. It's not downloaded until after they mail it out to you, right? So once they mail it out to you, it normally shows up on the va.gov website where you can go check it out. And this is what your letter is going to have. It's going to have the outcome of your claim, whether it's approved, denied, or deferred. Now, understand something. It's going to have the outcome of your whole claim. Okay. And then it's also going to have an outcome of the claim for each specific condition that you claim. So it's going to be the overall decision percentage, and then you're going to get a percentage assigned for each thing that you claimed. In another video, we'll talk a little bit about the VA math and what that means. 10 plus 10 does not equal 20. 50 plus 50 doesn't equal 100. The VA has a specific math that they do, and we'll talk about that in another video. It's too much to explain in this particular video, but all you need to know at this particular time is that you're going to have an overall decision rating, and then you're going to have a percentage assigned to those specific ratings. One example is 70% PTSD. You could have that assigned to a mental health claim that you submit. That could be your overall rating decision, and then you'll have other percentages assigned to other ratings, right? It could be overall 70, or it could just be, if there's one thing you claim, it could be PTSD, and that's the 70% overall rating and the 70% individual mental health rating. You're going to have your effective date for payments, which is really important. You have to look on that particular part. Make sure you read that whole thing about your effective date. We've already talked about the back pay for intent to file, so you want to read effective date for payment. That'll be on your decision letter. An explanation of how they reached their decision, meaning how did they get to how did they get to this specific decision for your VA claim? You know, what went into the factors what are the factors that contributed to that decision? Okay, so you want to look at the explanation section, right? And I think I've got a slide that talks about the explanation section that I'll go over here in a little bit. And here's a tip: you don't want to just look at the percentage. You want to read the reasons for decisions carefully, the reason why they decided. It explains how the VA viewed your evidence. And there's a lot of good information that you can get from the reasons for decision section. Most veterans don't read their whole decision letter. They look and see the percentage and they immediately want to fight. And they immediately say, man, I don't believe I deserve this. Let me submit a supplemental claim. Let me submit, something, a higher level review. Read the whole decision letter. And when I say read the whole thing, I mean read the whole thing. Read from top to bottom. Read the instructions. Read read the evidence for your claim. Read and make sure that the dates for deployment and the dates of service and your social security number and your birth date is right. Read all of that information because it all matters. So here's a reason for decision example that I thought I'd pull up for you guys. Okay. You'll notice here it says reasons for decision, service connection for migraine. Okay, this particular client that I worked with got service connection for migraine headaches. Now, they say here in the decision letter, service connection for migraine has been established as directly related to military service. The effective date of this grant is April 2nd, 2021. Service connection has been established from the day the VA received your claim. When a claim of service connection is received more than 1 year after discharge from active duty, the effective date is the date that the VA received the claim. 38 CFR 3.400. We've talked a lot about that. Okay, how the effective date is tabulated when you submit your claim, you submit the intent to file, it back pays to that particular date. An evaluation of 30% is assigned from April 2nd, 2021. Now, this is for one condition. This is for a service connection for migraine. Okay, and they've assigned an evaluation of 30% for migraines. Now, I want you to pay attention to the next part of this piece of the letter, okay, because it's very important. It says we have assigned a 30% evaluation for your migraine based on, and it gives a reason. Characteristic prostrating attacks occurring on an average of once a month over the last several months. Now, as we get deeper and deeper and deeper into this series and we start talking about different types of claims, what I'll share with you is the VA rating scale for most of the conditions that are common to veterans. We may not be able to do all of the VA rating scale conditions because as the human body is complex and as the human body has many parts, right, that as many parts as there are in our body, there's as many claims, things that you can claim. There are some rare diseases and rare things that people have experienced, right, that could even be the first time that the VA has seen something like this, right? And so what I'm going to do later on is talk about some common claims that veteran and conditions that veterans might experience over the course of the time on active duty that would be claimable for compensation with the VA. And migraines happens to be one of them. So look what it says here. It says a higher evaluation of 50% is not warranted for migraine unless the evidence shows very frequent, completely prostrating and prolonged attacks productive of severe economic inadaptability. Super, super important. Why do I say severe economic inadaptability? Well, think about this for a second. What they're saying in this particular section is that they could not rate a higher level of percentage for payment for compensation because the evidence and evidence in this case is a compilation of the VA claim. A compilation of the CMP exam and the evidence that they submitted or from going to the doctor, during the military, post-military service, and all those things that have a nexus and connects to service connection, right? That evidence or compilation thereof, what this decision letter is saying, what this VSR it has deduced is that evidence does not show very frequent, completely prostrating and prolonged attacks productive of severe economic inadaptability. In other words, you didn't have attacks that made it difficult for you to go to work or difficult for you to stay at work and complete your duties so that you can get paid and produce your lifestyle. And so therefore, it didn't stop you from being a productive human being and continuing to go to work. So therefore, we're not assigning a higher financial value to it because it's not something that stops you from continuing to provide for your family or to have financial stability. So that's why that economic inadaptability is there, right? It's not something that has completely debilitated you and caused you to stop working. So that's just an example of one claim and how you'll see it on your decision letter. So let's say you get this back and you're not satisfied with it. You think that your condition is worse. You'd like to be re-examined. It's important to know your appeal options. Did you disagree with your rating? You got 3 of them. Okay. You got the supplemental claim where you can submit new and relevant evidence. This could be in the form of medical records. This could be in the form of buddy lay statements, nexus letters, relevant and new evidence that will prove to the VA that the situation is worse than what they judged it to be. Okay. And the form you'll use for that supplemental claim is the 20 TAC 0995. Another thing you do is a higher level review. Again, and we'll talk about all of these things in separate videos because they all deserve their own videos. Okay. But a higher level review means no new evidence is allowed. A more senior VA reviewer will reevaluate your existing file. And then you will use for this particular review the Form 20 tag 0996 or higher level review. Okay, and you'll request that. You can submit that either online for the 5 ways that we talked about. Okay, I personally, for something like this, I might submit it through the mail, or I may go into a VSO office to submit this with all my documentation and paperwork, and making sure I have copies of everything that I've submitted and copies of all the correspondence that I received from the VA. Remember, we talked about that in some previous videos. Now, the other thing you can do is you can go to the Board of Veterans Appeals, or the BVA. This is a formal legal review. You can choose between a hearing, submitting new evidence, or a direct review. And again, this is something that deserves its own video, right? And so we won't go into depth about the Board of Veterans Appeals. It is a lengthy process. It is a deeply complex process, right? And it is a process where you have to be very, very meticulous in order to make sure that you win in the process. And if you're at this particular level, you're probably hiring a lawyer to help you, right? You use the VA form 10182. Now, when you're doing this, you want to choose a path that's based on your case strength, new evidence, availability, and timeline. In other words, case strength. How strong do you feel like your case is? What is the probability that you feel like you would actually win your claim if you went through all of these different steps? You've got to take that into consideration, and you've got to make sure that you weigh your options properly. New evidence availability, right? Did you go to the doctor? Did you have medical professionals actually observe and analyze your situation and come to the conclusion that it was not only service connected, but it was debilitating you from your normal functional everyday life? If that's the case, then you'll have to weigh that evidence, and then the timeline. How much time do you have? How much time has surpassed? This is all the VA, and doing your claim is all about timelines. It's all about timing. Okay, so you have to make sure that you are hitting all of those wickets. Here's some final tips for what I'm calling phase 4 of the submission of your claim. We've gone through phases 1, 2, and 3. Although all of those phases have sort of subtasks within them, but we've given you a general overview of phases 1, 2, and 3. Here's some final tips for phase 4. Be patient. When you do these claims, particularly when you do appeals, they can take a long, long time. And you have to be dug in and committed to actually doing this for the long haul. Okay, so take your time, be patient, pack a lunch because you're going to be a while. Stay organized. You want to keep a folder with your VA letters, all of the correspondence. Where we heard that before. Keep all of your correspondence. Listen, I don't care if they send you a piece of paper with some calligraphy on it talking about a party at the VA. Keep it. All right. You want to keep all your C&P exam notes. This is super, super critically important. All right. Any exam notes that you have from C&P exams, you want to keep those. And remember what we talked about, what you should bring into your C&P exam. We'll talk more about how that's different from active duty personnel versus veteran personnel versus even personnel who have not filed a claim, and it's been years since they got out of the military, or a person who has filed claims before, and they're refiling a claim again, or doing a supplemental claim, or seeking for an increase, or even seeking for a higher review. We'll talk about the differences between those things, because there are differences. Appeal documents, you want to have all of those things, because some veterans have done multiple appeals on certain things, so you want to make sure you have all that documentation and paperwork. Any rating decisions that you have ever received, whether those have been increased in ratings or decreased in ratings, you want to have that available and at the ready. And you want to leverage your VSO. All right, there are some good VSOs out there who are trained to do a good job. The tough part is finding one that will go to bat for you, one that will be consistent and committed to your case. All right, they can help you file appeals and explain the decision letter clearly. All right, and the last thing I will say is never, ever, ever give up. Okay, Um, I have known veterans to win on appeal. Um, and, this says you just need the right evidence and the right approach. But I will add something else in there is you need the right level of perseverance and resilience in order to win your claim. You have to set it in your mind is no matter how long this takes, no matter how much I have to do, no matter who tells me no, no matter how often I get rejected, if you know that you deserve to be compensated and get benefits for something that happened to you while you were in the military, please do not give up. I don't care what you have to do. Okay. Do everything you have to do in order to make sure you win that claim. So those are all the things that I wanted to talk about. I think that there are so many different ways to make sure that you have the very best opportunity to win your claim. Um, Getting a final decision letter is not a death knell in the coffin. If you stop, take your time, weigh your options, think about what it is that you want to do, and then write out a detailed plan of action for how you want to attack these things. And one other thing I'll talk about is, and we'll do a video about deferred claims as well. Denied claims are one thing, and then you have approved claims, and then you have deferred claims. We'll talk about what deferred claims mean as well. As a matter of fact, let me go a little bit into what these three things might mean. All right, let's talk a little bit about denied claims, deferred claims, and approved claims, denied claims, and deferred claims. If you have anything on your record that is, if you have anything there on your record that is on your decision letter that says you have a percentage associated with it, the VA has assigned a percentage of XYZ associated with it, like we saw in that example that I gave you. That means your claim has been approved at some compensation level for that condition. Okay. So, you could have up to 10 conditions, let's say, that have been approved, and they will have been assigned certain percentages. It could be migraines, 2 conditions for the knee, 2 conditions for the thigh, 2 conditions for the hip, 2 conditions for the ankle, right? And there's your 10 conditions. And on for each one of those conditions, there'll be assigned percentage. And again, if you look down there will be a reason why they made that decision and didn't increase you to something higher if you are not maxed out at the highest level that the rating could be. Okay, so those are the approvals, right? And then of course, if you have an overall rating of anything, it means you've been approved for something. You may not have been approved for 100% overall. You could be at 70%. You could be at 50% overall rating, combined rating. You could be at 30% overall combined rating, but that means you've been approved for an overall combined rating and individual compensation ratings. If you've been denied, the VA will tell you that in the first section where it lists all of your conditions, if you've been denied, and it will also tell you the reason why you got denied in the reasons for evidence section. Okay, the reasons for when you go down there and look at the section that I just showed you, at your reasons for denial or reasons for decisions, right? It'll show you why you got denied if you got denied a claim. Okay. Now, one other thing that we haven't talked a lot about is if your claim is deferred. If your claim is deferred, that means one of two things. The VA is, it can mean a couple of things. The VA is still making a decision on your claim, and therefore they have not come to a final decision where they could release it to you. Another thing that could be is that the VA may need more information from you. Okay. And so they have deferred your claim, and then they may reach out to you for additional information. Usually that's via separate correspondence. Okay. And another reason could be that they simply have not gotten around to doing that particular condition. I've seen some cases where some claims have been deferred because it was found out that the veteran did not have a compensation and pension exam, or in the absence of a compensation and pension exam, there was no evidence connected to that claim. So maybe the VA has reached out to the veteran and said, listen, we couldn't make a decision here, so we deferred your claim in light of new evidence or additional evidence for that particular thing, the condition that you placed on your list of conditions. So with that being said, I think that brings us to the end of this video. Again, I want you never to give up on your VA claim. I want you to continue to keep fighting for the benefits you deserve. And I want you to live royally and live well. I'll see you in the next video.